Hi, shalom everybody. One of the fascinations of mankind seems to be the desire to investigate to see if there are other worlds. In the modern era, hundreds of millions of dollars, or perhaps even more than that, has been spent on investigation, on picking up radio waves, manning expeditions, and fantasizing, are there other worlds out there? And are there inhabitants in those worlds? And I suppose it's part of the human nature to inquire about these things. But there's a beautiful Hasidic teaching that posits that though in general there are four spiritual worlds that precede this world, there are worlds within the worlds. So let me suggest the following to make it a little bit easier for you to understand. We live in a three-dimensional world. And it's a very practical world where time and place, talent, gender, religion, personhood, character, personalities, all of these things are very, very important. And yet there's simultaneously in this world is the world of music. And in the world of music, gender, race plays no role whatsoever, not in the composition of music nor in the appreciation of music. In fact, even time seems to play very little role in music. You could play a composition that's 300 years old and it will sound as fresh and as vibrant as something that was recently composed. Or perhaps there's the world of art. And in the world of art, again, things such as food and shelter don't play such a crucial role in that world. The world of business. You would think that in terms of emotions, a person has people that he likes and a person that he doesn't like, and he has companions that he inquires after, and he has people that he keeps a distance from. But in the world of business, money is money. You could do business even with your enemy. Even in war, you could do business with an enemy. Because the world of business is different than the world of, in a sense, the three-dimensional reality world. The world of imagination is an amazing world. There are multi-billion-dollar industries based on this world. You would never eat in a kitchen where there are rats running around, but I recall Disney made a movie where the rats were the chefs. In the world of imagination, the absurd is true. I could keep talking about other worlds, but let's refine it a little bit. What about the spiritual world? Well, for us, eating, drinking, wearing clothing, having shelter, and companionship are all very important. But in a world where there's a lot of meditation, a lot of prayer, fasting, introspection, actually, all of what I mentioned seems to play a very little role. What do all of these worlds within this world share in common? Well, what comes to mind for me is they all come with attention. You can't interact between one world and the other seamlessly. So the musician who lives in the world of music finds it often difficult to pay the rent. And the business person who uses his business skills to make deals and to run a company will find himself stymied if he tries to use those very same skills in running his household. And finally, those that are in virtual reality, which is a real truth by us today, they could be warriors and courageous in the world of reality, but they might actually be timid and socially inept. They never even leave their house. It's not easy to navigate between these two worlds. And you say, well, what about the spiritual world? Well, I got to tell you, ask a person who's into spirituality if he could meditate when the cell phone is ringing in his pocket. No, he has to turn off the cell phone. In fact, often he has to create a quiet space before he could become spiritual. Well, this tension applies in all of these worlds with one exception. And that's about a very unique personality who somehow is able to navigate between two worlds seamlessly without any difficulty whatsoever. In fact, he makes traveling between the two worlds even enjoyable. Wouldn't you like to meet such a person who could do that? And you don't have to go that far to meet him, because if you're listening to this YouTube, you are that person. You see, a Jew is able to transcend one world and join another world, not only without a conflict, but he merges the two. There's a beautiful definition that the Lubavitche Rebbe once gave to define the essence of a Jew. And he said, and I paraphrase, a Jew is a creature of heaven and earth, simultaneously, at the same time. You know, there are creatures on earth called amphibians. They essentially could live in two different worlds, the aquatic world, the terrestrial world. A Jew can live in the world of spirit and in the world of the physical perfectly well in unity. So, for example, there's a day of the year which we call Yom Kippur. It's called the Sabbath of the year. And that's a day that traditional Jews fast, pray, introspect, and in many ways remove themselves from the world. And then every seventh day is what we call the Sabbath, the Shabbat. And you go into a Jewish home, and he's sitting by a beautiful table with a very lavish and delicious menu. And they're both Sabbath. They're both holy. The Jew who's in the synagogue and prays is exactly the same Jew who goes out and does business. And he's equally holy. Why? Because when he's involved in business, he's involved in business based on the dictates of the Torah. So he's honest. He gives a full measure. He's not deceitful. He's generous. And at the same time, he's a businessman and he makes money. On every single level, a Jew could somehow travel between the physical and the spiritual in such a beautiful way that they're integrated. So, for example, if I ask you, a very spiritual person, is he really so concerned with the clothing and the... No, he has more important things to concentrate on. But a Jew, he's obsessed with his clothing. He wants to know, and he will ask the tailor, is there wool and linen in this garment together? And he says, what's the difference? He says, because if it has wool and linen together, I cannot wear it. It's against the Torah. And the tailor might look at you strangely. Hold it, I know you to be a spiritual man. It's important that you do good deeds wearing this suit, but are you telling me that the suit has to be a kosher suit? And he says, yeah, it actually does. And this is true about kosher business. This is true not only about making the money, but again, he's very involved with the details. He'll call up his accountant or CPA and say, tell me exactly how much profit did I make? And he says, well, what's the difference? You're in the black. I would estimate maybe $20,000 this month. He says, no, I want to know exactly. He says, well, why is that so important for you? He says, because I want to give 10% to charity. And I have to know how much I make in order to know how much to give to God and to his people. So essentially, the Jew not only does not find a conflict and an ill-fitting suit between the spiritual and the physical, he actually straddles both worlds at the same time. And that, my friend, is really far more impressive than finding out whether or not in Mars there's actually life. Because if you could find worlds within worlds within worlds, and to integrate them all in one wholesome being, you are magnificent. So, it has been said that we have more of a map of heaven in terms of the constellations than we have of the ocean. It's an unknown world for most of us. Actually, I would suggest that there's a much deeper world that lies within us, not only an ocean, but it's a world of holiness, of goodness, of virtue, of being a soul. That's the world that we want to encounter. That's the world that should have the greatest impact upon us. Let me close with one more thought, and that is, I mentioned that there isn't any difficulty in integrating these two worlds because we are a creature of heaven and earth. But if you look and use the metaphor of land and sea, how can we interact between the two? We obviously can't walk on water. And the answer is something called a boat. The boat allows someone from the land to not only float on the water, but we have boats capable where you could live on the water for many, many months. I would suggest as a symbol that perhaps the mitzvah could be considered that boat. How can me and you on earth, with 2 feet on the ground, somehow connect to a God who's immaterial and, for lack of a better word, spiritual? And the answer is, take a boat. Go to that world. Visit that world. Put on your tefillin. Light your Shabbos candles. Give your charity. In all of these boats, we, physical men, are able to sail and to transcend and to find ourselves much greater and in a much more powerful position than we started off with. So friends, let's explore deeply ourselves, and in doing so, we will truly find fulfillment. Shalom.